大家好，经常有朋友来问我，怎么样才能学好中文? So for today's video, I'm gonna tell you how I learned Chinese because I think the way that I learnt it is a particularly effective method, if not exactly orthodox. So, as I talked about in my last video, I first came out here to China in 2007 when I was 18 years old. And that's where the story of me learning Chinese begins. So, at the time, I was 18, I was young, I was excited. It was my first time to travel pretty much anywhere outside of Europe, and my first time to travel anywhere alone. I'd done martial arts since I was a kid. I'd always been fascinated by them, and I was so excited to finally be in the origin, the birthplace of Kung Fu. And so, after I landed, I barely spoke any Chinese at all. I think I knew something like ni hao and xie xie, like a couple of very, very basic phrases, but you can pretty much say that I started from zero. But the thing that I did was I didn't like sign up to a class or anything. I basically just picked up a couple of key phrases, a couple of very, very basic phrases that I could use for buying things in the tourist markets in Xi'an. So I pretty much learned 多少钱, which means how much is this, 太贵了, which is this is too expensive. That's pretty much the extent of it. And I just went around the market and I just bought all sorts of souvenir tack. So I took these couple of phrases along with the numbers, and I just went to the souvenir markets and I started buying tourist tack and just bargaining with the people selling them. And that was pretty much my first experience of speaking a foreign language. I mean, bar like learning some basic French and stuff at school that I never ever used, but it was my first experience really speaking to people in another language, and it got me hooked. And so then I would go back and I would learn a couple more phrases, and then I'd go out again and I'd make the conversation just a little bit more complicated, you know? I would add a 便宜点好吗? So I'd start, which is like, you know, can you make this cheaper? So I would start with like, how much is this? Oh, it's too expensive. Can you make it cheaper? And then, you know, I've got a three sentence conversation. And then the next time I'd add like a fourth sentence and so on. I gradually, you know, just repeat the same conversation in the tourist markets, you know, buying souvenirs, making that conversation longer and more complicated each time. And then I expanded to getting in a taxi and, you know, telling the driver where I want to go. And then the next time I would add a phrase, you know, what do you like? Have you been to England? Even though probably none of them had ever been to England, but still, you know, I was just trying to like, just learn these simple phrases and then just put them into practice, and every time just going out and just using it. And after a month or so, it kind of got to the point where I could do this in several kind of common situations quite well. And then a lot of my other expat friends, they kind of thought that I spoke really good Chinese, even though I didn't. It was just a few phrases I'd memorized pretty well and a kind of mock conversation. Most of the time I had no idea what the Chinese were actually replying to me. But here was the thing. I would never say I don't understand. I would nod and agree and just try and keep the conversation going. And then what would happen was my other foreign friends would think that I understand everything that's going on. And so whenever we came into a situation where we need someone to speak Chinese, even though they were learning as well, I would be the one that everyone would default to translate. And so what that meant was I was getting all the opportunities to practice Chinese, and most of them weren't. And so they became, you know, quite stuck in a certain level, but I was constantly improving. And so that was really, I guess, the main thing, was this whole kind of fake it till you make it, while just going out there and just speaking to people and just listening and just getting as much input as I can, listening to actual Chinese people speaking Chinese in real conversation, you know, not textbook stuff, and just getting used to it. And slowly, you know, as you're hearing it every day, even though you don't really know what they're saying, you start to pick up some key kind of grammar structures, key phrases. You know, you hear a word like 如果, you're like, oh, I keep hearing someone say 如果, what does that mean? I look it up, oh, it means if. And I keep hearing 但是, oh, what does 但是 mean? Oh, it means but. And so slowly you start to pick up these little points in the conversation, and then you start to realize the logic and the flow of what someone's trying to say. So, I mean, this is definitely not an orthodox way. I wasn't learning in a classroom or anything like that. And I did this for probably the first, I think, 3 years I was in China. Pretty much just going around and talking. I couldn't read or write any Chinese at this point. I could recognize a few characters, maybe like dishes on a menu or some important things on like road signs. But I hadn't really learned how to read and write. It was just speaking. I didn't really know anything about the tones. I was just kind of making it up as I went, and people seemed to understand me most of the time. And then it was after about 3 years of doing that I decided, okay, now I want to take my Chinese to the next level. And also I was in need of a visa when I was living in Yantai, so I decided to sign up to a language course. And yeah, I got myself a student visa, got accommodation stuff, which allowed me to focus on my martial art training, without having to worry about where to stay and everything. But also I was doing these language classes every morning, and although I already could converse quite fluently, I could hold quite good conversations, I had to go to the beginner class because I went to the intermediate class first. I couldn't read or write anything. I couldn't understand the textbooks. I didn't understand any of the grammar structures. I didn't even know what the 4 tones were properly. So I went back to the beginner class and I basically relearnt formally, but I still believe that really, really helped, to get that foundation and kind of put it on top of what I already had. So I want to just interrupt this video briefly to talk to you guys about a product that I use quite a lot myself. Now, I think you know me well enough by now to know that I would not endorse just anything. If I'm going to promote something, it's only going to be something that I truly believe in and something that I genuinely do use myself. Some of you may know that I also work as a journalist and geopolitical analyst. And having this line of work has made me acutely aware of the biases that are present in a lot of mainstream media reporting on world events. And as such, it becomes harder to know what's really going on and to separate reality from the narratives that are being spun. And so one of the products that I use to get around that is something called Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have a political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. You can verify your information and know where the news is coming from. With Ground News, you can see what the media is exaggerating, sensationalizing, over or under reporting. You can see who funds each publication, compare coverage, and think critically about the information you consume. Go to check.ground.news/monkeystealspeach to check it out now. If you subscribe for my link, you get 40% off the Vantage subscription. And then later on, once I moved here to Shanghai, I decided to take all of that knowledge that I already had from, learning through conversation, through doing a language program in Yantai. And I thought, you know what? I've never been to university. Why don't I just use all of this and get an easy degree? So I signed up for an undergraduate degree in Shanghai International Studies University, right here in Shanghai. And I then took all of that knowledge and I solidified it into a degree, which was then a great stepping stone because I was then able to go on and do a master's degree in Australia in international relations, which then took me down another road. So yes, I think that if you want to learn a language, the most important thing is just getting out, trying, making mistakes, talking to people, listening as much as you can. The more you hear, the more kind of input you'll get, and the more your brain will start to adapt, and it will no longer just sound like a random collection of sounds, but you'll start to hear the patterns emerge. So yeah, I would say if any of you looking to learn a language, give this a try. I think that this is a very good way to do it. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.